Welcome to another Becoming a Modern Man. We are playing Grishoalbrand, and this time we're running up against Mardu Pyromancer. So this is our opening hand. We've got double Grishoalbrand, Through the Reach, Discovery Dispersal, and a Collective Brutality, as well as a Temple of Malice and a Swamp. I think this is a solid enough hand. We've got our a spell that can get our big creatures onto the battlefield. We've got Grishoalbrand. And we've got a draw spell in Discovery Dispersal, so I'm relatively happy with this. So opponents on the play here, Bloodstained Mire, Blood Crypt into a Thoughtseize, which isn't ideal. It's going to take our Discovery Dispersal away, so we're going to have to hope to draw relatively well. Temple of Malice gets us to Scry, and we get to see Night Whisper on top of the deck, which certainly is something we want to keep. It gets us to dig it a little bit deeper. I mean, it's not the end of the world though, ultimately, because as I say, if our opponent can't get rid of this through the breach, then long term we've still got a game-winning combo in our hand, potentially. Opponent Faithless Lootings, dropping Helix and Collines Command. Puts a Sacred Foundry into play tapped, which is kind of interesting. That they're not representing Path to Exile. I mean, realistically, it's not very likely that we're going to be able to combo here, but there is the possibility, potentially. So, Night's Whisper finds us a couple of Worldspine Worms, which isn't ideal, but on the bright side, it does mean that we are much more likely to, or much less likely to fizzle on Grishoalbrand activations. We only need to find one Nourishing Shoal in the sort of 14 or so cards that we want to draw. Potentially more. After Grishoalbrand attacks. So opponent Flashbacks Looting, I think, for their turn, which isn't terribly exciting for them. We get a looting of our own, which finds us Grishoalbrand and Discovery Dispersal. There is a consideration to have here that if we drop any of our reanimation targets into the graveyard, our opponent might be running main deck Surgical, given that became a more popular thing since Is It Phoenix and Dredge was a couple of the top decks in the format. But I suppose at the very least we're going to be able to Through the Breach and then Worldspine Worm. Which isn't a bad run of plays in itself. So I decided to pitch one of each, which I suppose is more risky in case they had double Surgical, but I don't think the chances of that are particularly high. But I suppose maybe we should have pitched as many of one copy of our reanimation targets as possible. I like having a Grishoalbrand in the graveyard for sure, in case we do draw into Gorria's Vengeance. So we're going to do Discovery here. We've had Nourishing Shoal and Simian Spirit Guide. So we actually want to keep both of these. So the Spirit's Guide makes sure that we get 4 mana next turn. And then the Nourishing Shoal allows us to gain 11 life for a start. And also we can discount this Through the Breach further. So it'll only cost 4 mana if we splice it onto the Nourishing Shoal. Which also potentially means we can get a second chance if we do somehow fizzle out. So opponent goes down to 14, taps out for a Bedlam Reveler, pitching Lingering Souls and Here in a Land, drawing 3 new cards. But I don't think that's going to be particularly relevant. So we exile the Simian Spirit Guide, we play Nourishing Shoal, splicing Through the Breach onto the Nourishing Shoal, which allows us to drop Grishoalbrand into play, and yeah, our opponent just concedes there. I mean, it's not terribly likely they're going to win from this position, so we can draw a lot of cards, most of our deck, realistically, and I think that will be sufficient to wrap up the game. So our opponent thinks the same and concedes. Okay, so here we have the sideboard. In terms of cards we want to bring in, Bontu's Last Reckoning is probably one of the cards we want to bring in. Their deck's kind of like a swarm deck. It makes multiple tokens with Lingering Souls and Pyromancer's Ascension. So having a way to just clear the board could be very valuable for us and buy us a lot of time. Engineered explosives is another option potentially. Obviously we can destroy tokens with it very easily, casting it for 0 and then sacking it for 2 mana. But I'm not sure how valuable that is. Another option is Chalice. We can Chalice for 1 potentially, and then that would prevent our opponent from having Path to Exile, which is a problem card for us generally. I mean, obviously we still get to activate Grishoalbrand, so hopefully we'll find a way to win, but it does pose a few issues for us if they can just path our reanimation target, or through the breach dropped into play card, I guess. So I think that is a possibility. The downside of that is that basically it turns off Faithless Looting. I mean, you can play around it, I guess, but it's still a bit of a problem. And it does, and yeah, Faithless Looting is kind of our best enabler for the Gorya's Vengeance quick kills. So not sure I like that, but I mean, we could become a slightly slower deck and go for Chalice for 1. But I don't know if that disrupts them enough, so I think pretty happy with just bringing the last Reckonings, or some number thereof, and maybe even the Engineered Explosives. In terms of cards to cut, Lightning Axe probably doesn't do a whole lot, although it's not terrible, I suppose. Killing Pyromancer, etc. Collective Brutality is okay, as it does kill Young Pyromancer, but not terribly great. And I feel like the Rituals are often a card I'm looking around to potentially cut, because I don't think they add a terrible amount to the deck, but they can help us combo a little bit faster from time to time. So yeah, I think those are probably the cards I'm looking at cutting. Something in the 2 mana list, most likely. And then the Bontu's Last Reckonings, and I probably would skip on the Engineered Explosives, but it is an option for us. Okay, so we have game 2 against Mardu Pyromancer. This is our opening hand. So it obviously is light on lands. It does have our Bontu's Last Reckoning in it. It's also a potential turn 2 kill, in that if we draw into a red source, we could Faithless Looting Gorya's Vengeance. I imagine we chose to go first though, so I mean turn 3 kill at the best. But yeah, I think I'm willing to keep this on the potential power of this hand. If we do draw, as long as we draw a second land, we can Discovery, which hopefully will dig us into a red source eventually. So I'm willing to take the risk on this one. Oh, actually we won the first game, so we are definitely on the draw. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think that makes it even better. Decision, we can potentially turn 2 kill our opponent if we draw a land. And luck should have it that we do draw the Bloodstained Mire. So we can Blood Crypt here. So and cast Faithless Looting, finds a Simian Spirit Guide and another Bloodstained Mire. So we're going to drop Grishoalbrand here, and I think the Willspine Worm is probably the other card we want to get rid of most. Although, actually, maybe we should just pitch to land, because, as I say, if you have a Willspine Worm in play, I mean in your hand, then it's a lot easier to get the Nourishing Shoal combo going. Unfortunately, we get Inquisitioned, which takes our Gorya's Vengeance away. So in this circumstance, I think I'm happier that we kept the land and pitched the worm. Although we end up drawing through the breach, and we do need to find something to go with that. But we have got time, and we have got Discovery Dispersal, so that's nice. Second through the breach, don't think we really want that. And I'll probably take a Temple of Malice. We want to tick up to being able to cast this through the breach, and getting us a Scry will also be valuable. Meanwhile, our opponent hasn't actually put anything on the battlefield, so we're not under any major pressure and we do have this Last Reckoning. But it has Thoughtseizes, as it turns out, which is unfortunate. Going to take the Last Reckoning, and yeah, our opponent does now have a threat. Fortunately for us, we draw into Gorya's Vengeance, so feeling pretty lucky there. And then that means we can get this Grishoalbrand into play, draw a bunch of cards, and combo off. So yeah, our opponent got a little bit unlucky, and their deck never really fired properly, and we managed to combo out very nicely in both games. They didn't seem to have a lot of answers to the threats we were bringing, so that certainly helped us out. But yeah, Path and Surgical are potential problems for us and cards to look out for in this matchup. But yeah, certainly the speed of their deck doesn't seem to match up very well to the speed of our combo, which certainly poses problems for them on their end.